And so what it ended up being was just free money, helicopter.
Dude, what are we saying, brother? Dude, I love Republicans because they're just like, good things are actually bad and bad things are actually good. Like, most of this commentary just revolves around like, America has a lot of problems. America has a lot of issues. We mustn't solve them. Kamala Soviet style joy.
Republicans are Nazis. You cannot separate yourselves from the bad white people.
Growing up, I never thought much about race. It never really seemed to matter that much, at least not to me.
Am I?
I would really appreciate it if you
I'm
left.
trying to learn. I'm on this journey.
If I'm going to sort this out, I need to go deeper undercover.
They gonna say I'm racist.
Joining us now is Matt, certified DEI expert.
Here's my certification. And what you're doing is you're stretching out of your whiteness. Listen more for you in this field. Is America inherently racist?
The word inherent is challenging there.
I want to rename the George Washington Monument to the George Floyd Monument.
America is racist to its bones.
So inherently.
Yeah, this country is a piece of
White.
folks.
White.
Trash. White.
This is the ad for the new Matt Walsh shit, right? All right, here.
Zero questions as the de facto Democratic nominee. And that is an amazing accomplishment in and of itself, that she's been able to go almost an entire month without answering a single adversarial question this entire time, because her campaign is two things: free money and joy. Those are the things: free money, joy, and zero questions whatsoever. She now says that she will commit to 2 presidential debates. Now, normally you have 3 presidential debates, but she is very huffy about having 3 presidential debates. The last thing she wants is that her positions be exposed before the American public as the communism light that they are, economically speaking, and the absolute sheer weakness and cowardice of her foreign policy. She doesn't want that exposed on stage, so she's going to minimize this as much as humanly possible. Yesterday, Team Harris said that they would have 3 debates total. They'd have 1 VP debate between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance. Makes sense, because the last thing they want is J.D. Vance just tearing Tim Walz a new one over and over and over. As we will see, Tim Walz is a horrible vice presidential pick. What they really don't want is a repeat performance of Kamala Harris in front of the public. See, it took many debate performances in 2019, 2020 for her to come completely apart, for the wheels to come off the Kamala Harris bus. And so what they're hoping is that the less you see of Kamala Harris, the more you will like her, which, frankly, is a good strategy, because the more you see of her, the more you dislike her. They put out a statement yesterday after Donald Trump had suggested that there'd be 3 presidential debates, just like normal, because the last candidate, died. So he has said, why don't we have 3 presidential debates? She said, no, won't do it. Quote, the debate about debates is over. I like that they can just declare this. They can just randomly declare that the debate about the debates is over. That doesn't have any sort of totalitarian overtones. Donald Trump's campaign accepted our proposal for 3 debates.
Totalitarian overtones. Kamala Stalin Harris only wanted to do 1 debate instead of 3.
2 presidential and a vice presidential debate. Assuming Donald Trump actually shows up on September 10th to debate Vice President Harris, Governor Walz will see J.D. Vance on October 1st, and the American people will have another opportunity to see the vice president and Donald Trump on the debate stage.
It's so funny. Donald Trump was literally avoiding doing any debates at all, harder than you avoid the top of the hour ad break. And now he's like, actually, no, it's Kamala Harris that's running away from the debate. There should be 1,000 debates. Let 1,000 debates bloom. You're doing a great job on the ass today. Thank you. Thank you, Kasha Leah. That's the kind of energy that I would like from more chatters.
In October. Now, what Democrats know is that they're going to ramp up the early voting as fast as humanly possible. And so by the time you hit October, half of their votes are already going to be in the can. Kamala Harris continues, voters deserve to see the candidates for the highest office in the land share their competing visions for the future. The more they play games, the more insecure and unserious Trump and Vance reveal themselves to be to the American people. Those games end now. I mean, the only campaign that's been playing games about the debates has been the Kamala Harris campaign, because Donald Trump made a commitment to Joe Biden, who is no longer the actual nominee. Kamala Harris wasn't.
I think the more that the Trump campaign goes nutty mode, the more Ben Shapiro basically has to readjust his commentary to reflect how stupid the Trump administration is. Like, I think Ben's smarter than this. Like, I don't think Ben's a stupid guy by any means. All right. I don't think so. But Ben knows what his audience is, what their demands are, and has to do commentary that is adjusted to like what the candidate is. It is pretty funny for him to just blatantly disregard reality in this situation, because he's just like, yeah, it's actually the Kamala Harris that's like against it. The more debates. It's like everybody heard Donald Trump run away originally from debating.
Involved in those particular negotiations and then playing games to try and pretend that Trump is running away from them when in reality they are running as fast as humanly possible away from Donald Trump and JD Vance because they do not want to be in the public eye. And the reason they don't want to be in the public eye is because they've got nothing. They've got absolutely nothing. They just pasted a new face on the same old terrible Joe Biden agenda, and they're hoping that nobody notices that. Now, they do have a problem, and that is that the ghost of Joe Biden is now haunting Kamala Harris. What the Harris campaign would prefer is for Joe Biden to go back into the crypt where he is kept every night and just to stay there. That is what they would prefer. They would prefer that no one associate Kamala Harris with Joe Biden, which would be quite a feat considering that Kamala Harris would be an obscure no-name California senator like Alex Padilla if it were not for the fact that Joe Biden picked her up from the scrap heap of American politics and made her vice president on the basis of DEI qualifications. She is only famous because of Joe Biden. She's only a national figure because of Joe Biden. And by the way, from day one, he said this is the Biden-Harris White House. He said she was intimately involved in every decision. So she is tied at the hip to his policies, which is something that Joe Biden himself said. Peter Doocy asked him about it. And he said, she's not going to distance herself from my economic policies. By the way, he is right. The only economic policies she has are his.
How much does it bother you that Vice President...
Okay, but his economic policies aren't bad. Like, his advocacy for a lot of shit is actually some of the only good things that this Biden administration has done. I can't believe I'm saying this, but this is one of the good things that the Kamala Harris campaign is doing, which is following along with the good parts of Biden's messaging and platform. As I reiterated over and over again, good message, bad messenger was the situation. Okay? Good message, bad messenger was the issue with the Biden administration. What are you going to do? The thing is, Ben can't advocate against capping the price of insulin at $35 because his diabetic audience is going to lose their minds if they find out that Ben is against that sort of thing, because he's deeply invested in the profit margins of some of America's greatest mega corporations. That's just the problem. He can't talk about the expansion of the child tax credit being a negative thing, because then you got people who want to have children who are greatly going to benefit from this. And if he actually openly states that, they're going to be like, well, what the fuck are you saying? I want that, though. I want that money. Shut the fuck up, Ben. That's it. That's the issue. In a world where even the Republican Party is increasingly drumming up populist economic messages, it is quite difficult for the likes of Ben Shapiro to openly advocate against policies like this. There are less and less people who take this Redditor ass tone and go, no, neoliberalism is the way forward. Actually, when profits are good for corporations, our lives are good too. Part of that is because the cost of living has greatly increased. So that has created a lot of resentment against mega corporations as well. Obviously, if you could still keep getting your cheap, affordable consumer goods at the same rate that you were able to get it, in prior years, maybe there'd be less people chirping about monopolization. Maybe there'd be less people chirping about corporations, mega corporations in general. But that time is gone. You can't consistently advocate for how a better future will only happen if the youth drop the notion that they're going to retire one day. You know what I mean? That's a horrible way to message.
Harris might soon, for political reasons, start to distance herself from your economic...
She's not going to.
You don't think she's going to, Mr. President?
He said she's not going to do it. He's very adamant. She's not going to do it. She's not going to do it. That's a problem for Kamala Harris because it turns out most people don't actually like her economic policies. In fact, recent polls showed 52% of Americans do not think America should move in the direction of California. And yet the same polls are showing that 52% of Americans are going to vote for Kamala Harris. What's the disconnect? She's hiding her policies. She's hiding herself.
That's such a disingenuous way to interpret polls. What does that have to do? You said nothing about her economic proposals. This level of disingenuous framing is so silly, dude. Come on, brother. That's like a new low for Ben. I can't believe I'm saying this.
Instead, she's smearing it over with a pastiche of joy. A pastiche of joy. We'll get to the joy component in just a moment. Biden, however, will not let this thing go. Kamala Harris is trying to hide everything about herself. It's all masquerading as joy, but I'll tell you where economic joy truly lies. Not spending that much on your cell phone company. There's only one.
Fuck this guy.
Said, yeah, Joe Biden was so concerned to let me know that he was connected with Kamala Harris that he grabbed my arm.
Bidenomics continue to Vice President Harris. There's no real failure fault. The economy is going to continue with all those legislation you passed. It's working. In case you haven't noticed, it's working.
Yeah, he grabbed my arm in that answer. The president saying that the Vice President Kamala Harris will not distance herself from the current economic policies.
Now, the reality is that she is attempting to distance herself from Joe Biden while embracing even more communistic and socialistic policies. And she wants to have it both ways. She wants to both say that she was deeply embedded in Bidenomics and also she has no responsibility for Bidenomics. So yesterday, she had to do a very awkward rally with Joe Biden, and it was indeed an awkward rally. And Joe Biden was out there touting Bidenomics, which, of course, is wildly unpopular. But he was saying things that she can't dissociate with because she actually requires the same voters that Biden had in the bag. So here was Joe Biden rallying with Kamala Harris yesterday saying everyone does better with more unions. I mean, if that were true, then there would be more than 7% of the workforce currently unionized in the private.
Oh my God, I hate this monstrous piece of. Oh yeah, I saw this. Aiden Ross will be moving to Germany if Kamala Harris gets elected for president. Every state votes Democrat.
Private sector. It is eminently untrue. In fact, everyone does significantly worse with large-scale unions in the United States. Consumers get absolutely screwed. Industries turn into zombie industries subsidized by the federal government. This is the story of the car industry in the 1960s and 70s in the United States. But here is Joe Biden trying to make sure that he's got those union voters in the bag for Kamala Harris.
I love the idea. I love this. He's like, yeah, if unions are so good, why 7%? It's like, bro, why 7%? We're in America. Is it because of that pay your salary have completely gutted labor unions? That's also part of the reason why there's no like mechanism of balance. It's completely out of whack. Corporations can do whatever the they want, dude.
There's more we can do for everyone. We can't give up. They told me every major piece of legislation we passed to give us the strongest economy in history and the strongest economy in the world. We got more to do for working people. By the way, everybody does better when there's more unions.
That is eminently untrue. As any business person will tell you, that is not true. Sometimes unions are good. The vast majority of the time, unions make demands that
any business person will tell you. What about the overwhelming majority of the population that are workers and not business owners? I like that he said, unions are bad. Source, Jeff Bezos. Unions are bad. Source, Bill Gates. He'll tell you how bad unions are. Just understand that that's what he's saying, and that is the truth. Of course, they don't believe that. Unions are good. But try to understand how at odds Ben Shapiro is with like the average working class person when he makes these kinds of arguments. You have no idea how many union employees listen to Ben Shapiro and agree with him. No, I do. I know. Americans, unfortunately, have been fed a steady diet of their entire lives. They're primed to be reactionary, and the likes of Ben Shapiro can very easily take advantage of that messaging gap, take advantage of that lack of education. Just show them shit like this, and maybe you'll be able to convince them that he's a demon. All of my coworkers have been repeating this video bar for bar since it dropped. Ben Shapiro still holds the youth. If you look at Ben, first of all, I know for a fact that he does not. Okay? I know for a fact that in the political sphere, this is 100% a factually accurate statement. In the YouTube political sphere, I have the youngest audience. Okay, straight up. I have the largest 18 to 35 demographic in the entirety of the online political ecosystem. So anyone that tells you otherwise is lying to you. If you think that like Ben Shapiro is actually captivating youth with this kind of narrative, with this kind of rhetoric, you're wrong.
Actually bankrupt the businesses they're supposed to be negotiating with. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris was campaigning with Joe Biden, and more of this, frankly. I think Republicans should be tying Kamala Harris to Joe Biden because, again, she is only famous. She is only a
yeah, I love this idiotic argument that unions actually bankrupt the businesses. So then what? Like unions are actually interested in like destroying the businesses? Who do you think the unions are comprised of? It's the workers. Obviously, they're not interested in bankrupting the business that they are a part of because guess what? Then there's no union. There's no wages and there's no labor if there's no business. What an idiotic argument. It's so dumb.
Prominent political figure. She's only a Democratic nominee because she was put in power by Joe Biden, and she promptly turned around and stabbed him directly in the neck. Here she was at this rally bragging about her tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act. So she doesn't want to own the inflationary record of the Biden administration, but she brags about being one of the people who was the deciding factor in the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which was one factor in the 40-year highs in inflation we have seen under this terrible administration.
Yeah. No, he's right, dude. The Inflation Reduction Act, which came after record high inflation, was responsible for the record high inflation that preceded it. Thank you. No, he's right, dude. The Inflation Reduction Act actually was responsible for the inflation that happened before it, as is literally in the name, Inflation Reduction Act. It traveled throughout time and was able to increase inflation before it could reduce it. Anyway, that argument is also insanely stupid from, yes, the intellectual gladiator, according to Barry Weiss, when she used to work at the New York Times, by the way. Barry Weiss wrote an article at the New York Times about the intellectual dark web where she called Ben Shapiro an intellectual gladiator of the right. Thank you, Ben. That was cool that he just dropped that in there. But also, these guys have complained non-stop about inflation, and then also said Kamala has not taken ownership over the inflation. Now she's acknowledging that inflation is still a problem and wants to do something about it. And they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What do you mean you want to do something about inflation? Hey, that's communism. What are we talking about? You literally chirped about Kamala Harris acting like inflation wasn't real. Okay, she acknowledged it. And she said, this is my policy prescription. This is my proposal. And now they're like, no, it's additionally stupid when he keeps saying Kamala Harris has no policies. Whereas like Donald Trump literally just keeps talking about inflation and he says we're going to cut prices in half. And he has yet to answer for the how. Like he has not answered the how. How are you going to cut prices in half? It doesn't make any sense.
2 years ago, as vice president, I was proud to cast the tie-breaking vote that sent the bill that gave Medicare the power to negotiate and let it get to the president's desk. And I was proud when our president, Joe Biden, signed that bill into law.
God, she's awful. She is just plain awful. And now she's spelling out more of her communistic policies. So, as of today, she's going to call on Congress to pass a federal ban on price gouging as part of her economic platform, according to Politico, to lower grocery prices and everyday costs. That action, to be announced during a speech in North Carolina, is among others she will take in her first 100 days in office to lower high grocery costs, according to a campaign official granted anonymity to discuss policy ahead of an official announcement. And the fact that we are now 27 days in to her campaign and there is no policy on her website, none, zero, is pretty impressive, frankly speaking. This is idiot policy. Passing federal laws on price gouging on groceries is idiot policy. The reality is that in the grocery industry, profit margins are well under 2%. There's very, very little profit margin in the grocery industry because it's really competitive. There are tons of groceries. There's tons of supply. There is no shortage of food in the United States. And so the idea that it is monopolistic companies price gouging people and that's why the prices have gone up is insane. First of all, price gouging in general is almost always crap because the reality is that prices are determined by supply and demand. I can't gouge you on price unless I'm the only supplier available in a really, really wide radius. No competition is available. And you are willing to buy at the price that I set. That is the only way I can, quote unquote, price gouge you. But there is no actual definition for price gouging because it turns out that according to Democrats, price gouging is just prices they don't like because it makes.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, just because a grocery store has a different name and there's like 3 of them in a row in your neighborhood doesn't mean that they're not owned by the same company. Just so you guys understand. That's number one. Number two, grocery stores have increasingly merged with one another, and there's a massive merger in play right now as we speak. The last 2 major grocery stores have been trying to consolidate. Okay. So just understand that Ben is just straight up lying to you when he says there's a tremendous amount of competition in the grocery chain, in the grocery store business. Ben's also lying about the price, the profit margins that he's talking about as far as the grocery business being too hard to, I mean, they're just like, they're voluntarily offering, these incredibly low price points, even though it's just crazy. It's just it's such a hard industry. Why is he lying is the question? Because he's a right-wing bullshit. I already went into detail about how companies engage in price leadership, especially when they have corporate consolidation in this sector. And grocery stores, of course, have massive corporate consolidation. And it is very easy under an oligopolistic structure to engage in what is known as price leadership. Okay? The other side of this issue is that what are you supposed to do? Not eat food? Like, what do you mean? Like, what are people supposed to do? What's the alternative here? Corporations could bring up the prices. There's no competition, which he's lied about. Okay. What are you going to do? Not eat? Good luck.
Makes them look bad politically. If she believes that she's going to bring down prices through price controls, this has been tried. It is Soviet-style policy. It is Cuban-style policy. It is Venezuelan-style policy. Simply declaring that the price of a product shall be X does not guarantee the widespread availability of that product. In fact, what it leads to is a spur in demand and a reduction in supply. That is what price control.
Why? More people can buy food. They're going to eat. Okay. Why is that going to increase? Why is that going to decrease supply? Like, more people are purchasing. Why can't supply keep up with the amount of purchase? It always does. It always has. Why? We have so much surplus, dude. We literally dump a ton of food. We do not have a shortage of food. Ben already admitted that. He already acknowledged it. Not only did we already not have a shortage of food, we literally waste a ton. That is because we want to maintain the same prices for food. If we didn't dump all the food that we're not consuming, then all of a sudden prices would get lower. And then companies would not want to, yield the same level of crop. What other people are not considering, or what Ben is not considering in this situation, is that there's subsidies all the way anyway. These companies are already completely subsidized by the government. So we have subsidies that taxpayers are paying for to make the production of this food as cheap as possible. Then beyond those subsidies, we're also paying in subsidies in the form of like welfare to companies like Walmart and whatnot that take advantage of the social safety nets that kind of exist. They're not great, by offering the lowest amount of wages they physically can get away with. Then also, food stamps, EBT, obviously SNAP benefits that those very same workers utilize at the store, mind you, double dipping into the profits. And this is over here acting like there's nothing we can do. If these guys say, oh, sorry, we can't keep supplying you because price points are too low, prices are too low for us, we just can't keep supplying the same level of food, then you institute the Defense Production Act. And if they don't change their attitude, then you take it over, seize it.
Controls do. Price controls mean more people want the thing because now it's cheaper, and fewer people are willing to produce the thing because now there is no profit in producing the thing. Very often, there's actual loss in producing the thing, and people do not produce things at a loss. This is why price controls lead to bread lines. And I know Bernie Sanders thinks bread lines are great. Bread lines are wonderful because, look, that means you're just in a line for bread. What could be but a bread line? Sounds great. But it's actual terrible policy. Every economist understands, right, left, center, unless you're like a full-scale Marxist, that price controls are some of the worst policy you could possibly implement. And obviously she's pushing it because she is of the opinion that Americans are too stupid to understand what price controls are. Now, Kamala Harris isn't stupid enough to believe in price controls, or maybe she is. One way is about Harris is, and you can't lower.
Dude, the funniest part about it is that he relies on how stupid his audience is to advocate for something that only benefits corporations, not even do a good enough job in his advocacy, because he knows his audience is so dumb and they trust him that they won't realize that this is purely against the interests of his own audience, of the citizens. Okay, he's putting profit over people and not even doing a good enough job with like the messaging, knowing full well that these guys will just like eat out of his hand no matter what.
Something called the Kellogg-Briand Pact of 1928. In 1928, it's also called the Paris Accords at the time. In 1928, a bunch of countries in Europe got together, including Germany and the UK and France. They all got together and they outlawed war in 1928. And you know how it worked out? Not amazing if you know your history, because it turns out that the 1930s followed, and that included World War II, the bloodiest war in human history. It turns out you can't outlaw war simply by passing a diplomatic piece of paper saying we outlaw war. And you can't lower prices simply by saying that you wish prices to be lower and then setting price controls. In fact, you usually end up with precisely the reverse of what it is you are seeking. And Kamala Harris is not that stupid. She knows that. But according to Politico, of course, it's a political move, right? Elevated everyday costs have plagued the Biden-Harris administration since Americans' grocery bills spiked during the pandemic. Even with some promising recent polling, most major voter surveys show President Biden and Harris well behind former President Donald Trump on the economy. Harris has tried to level set with voters about the pain of high food costs in recent campaign speeches, something progressive and battleground district Democrats on Capitol Hill have said they wish Biden would have addressed.
Is Ben going to mention Trump's policies on how he's going to magically cut the price of groceries in half, as he has claimed he will do once he's president? Because, like, what's Trump going to do? Like, he thinks drill, baby, drill is somehow going to magically translate to cheaper barrels of oil for Americans when America is exporting that oil anyway and has at times outright refused to make up for the supply shortage when OPEC Plus decided to limit the supply of oil and greatly drove up prices in the aftermath of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, openly stating that like their only responsibility is their fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders, and that no, they would not actually supply additional barrels of oil for the United States of America, for the American population, because they don't give a. So Trump doing the drill baby drill attitude is not going to magically lower oil prices when the American oil giants are not even remotely interested in lowering oil prices. As a matter of fact, they take advantage of OPEC Plus increasing oil prices by limiting supply. It doesn't make sense. I mean, Biden has offered an incredible amount of new land leases in general, in terms of like opening up new wells or opening up new areas that you can engage in drilling. The American oil and gas giants do not play ball, because why should they? They own the government.
Earlier in his presidency, Harris's proposals show how she would expand Biden's focus on price gouging and food costs, according to the plans detailed by her campaign. In addition to her push for the first ever federal ban on price gouging by food corporations, she would also direct the Federal Trade Commission and state attorneys general to investigate and levy penalties on food companies that violate the federal ban, which again is insane. This is insane. Food is not more expensive because the bread companies decided randomly to raise the prices in collusion with one another. Food is more expensive because the Federal Reserve pumped money into the economy at a rate unprecedented in human history. And then the Biden-Harris administration decided to jack more money into.
Wait, who did that? Even on that front. So Biden jacked it. Who did it first? Not that it matters ultimately, but because it absolutely is not a byproduct of like 2 stimmy checks, no matter how hard these guys chirp about this shit, but instead directly related to, or the PPP loans, obviously, and instead directly related to companies genuinely doing that, genuinely increasing prices and keeping them high. Even in his own argument, he's shitting on Donald Trump. He won't say it outright. Because he knows his audience is stupid.
In capitalism, we give to a certain group of people, by the way, a small minority, the power to determine prices, the prices to be charged for a shirt, for a bag of potato chips, for a software program, for whatever it is. The price is set by the owner or the board of directors, if it's a corporation, of capitalist enterprises. A free enterprise system means that the employer is free to set the prices that he or she wants. And what do they do with that freedom? Well, you know the answer, even if you've never gone to business school. You know that the employer, the producer, the owner, the entrepreneur, the capitalist sets the price that will get for him or her the greatest profit. That's what they're in business to get, and that's how they decide what to do with prices. Of course, they have to be careful. They can't just raise the price astronomically because obviously in our system, the higher the price, the fewer the people who can afford to buy it. And you'd be shooting yourself in the foot if you raised the price so far that there were only very few people left to pay, and then you'd lose in foregone sales.
I love the person being like, what about the invisible hand, when he's like quite literally describing that process of like what negative consequences can occur in terms of like normal market conditions when you set the price point too high. Like he's literally describing it. He's not talking about like everyone being motivated by self-interest, and then that's the reason why there's like not a barter system, but instead of wage structure, blah, blah, blah. But like ultimately, he's talking about how, yes, unless there is like pure inelastic demand, barring the pure inelastic demand, when there are at least some level of when there's at least some level of competition in the marketplace, there are going to be certain factors in play that cause the people that make the prices to not go as high as they want to.
What you had hoped to gain by raising the price. So what every capitalist understands is you push that price as high as you can, just to that point where pushing it any higher would be bad for profits because of the number of people who couldn't buy it anymore, and that's when you stop. But notice in my story that the capitalist is setting the price based on one thing he or she is focused on: profits. It is not in our capitalist system the obligation or the responsibility of the employer to worry about the consequences of whatever prices he sets or she sets. And that's where they become like King George III, who set all kinds of prices. For example, the famous tax on tea that led those colonists in Boston to have that first Boston Tea Party, throwing the tea into the harbor in protest because what the king was doing by taxing the tea was good for the king, but was awful for the city of Boston's merchants and the people dependent on them. Well, when capitalists raise their prices, they are not responsible any more than George III was for what happened, for the suffering that I'm going to show you, for the social consequences I'm going to sketch for you when prices go up.
Also, that is not what Adam Smith meant by invisible hand. He would have a stroke if he saw modern capitalism at work. Yes, Adam Smith, by today's standards, would be considered a libtard socialist by Ben Shapiro, okay? Don't ever ask what Adam Smith had to say about landlords. Yeah, U.S. oil production hit record high last year. U.S. stopped drilling is a lie, okay?
To the system. They thought it was good. Ezra Klein famously wrote a piece a couple of years ago lamenting the fact that inflation had resulted because it said, modern monetary theory, the idea that you can just pump money into the economy, was really good for people at the lower end of the spectrum. It was eviscerating income inequality because you were just helicoptering money on people. And then, unfortunately, it resulted in inflation. Of course it resulted in inflation. When you helicopter money on people, it doesn't make things worth more inherently. It just means the price of everything goes up. If I give everybody in the United States $10 extra, no one is any richer. It just means the prices go up by $10. That's all that happens. Because supply and demand. Ooh.
Wait, and I mean, what if corporations wanted to take advantage of that without any sort of additional, like, market forces do not operate by magic. At a certain point, there is literally a person that is responsible for increasing prices. Like, he makes it seem like it's gravity. We already dump a shit ton of food, man. What the fuck are we talking about? The idea that supply and demand is a naturally occurring phenomenon is so insane. I don't think he believes that either.
These people. It's just, it's amazing to believe that we are led by such dullards, but they're not dull. They know exactly what they're doing. And in fact, in the middle of an inflationary spiral, she has another proposal. This one is on housing. Guess what it is? Wait for it. It's free money. I know you weren't expecting it. Free money from Democrats in the middle of a $30 trillion national debt? No, they would never do such a thing. Our national...
Oh my God, national debt. Oh, that's great. Dude, watch. Republicans going back to deficit hawking when the toothpaste is completely out of the tube at this point. Great stuff. Please campaign on that, man. No, for sure. Campaign on that. Hey, how about we no longer give free money to Israel? Where's your deficit hawking there, Ben? I ain't never seen you chirp about unlimited billions of dollars going to Israel, Ben. Deficit hawking only comes into play when you're talking about offering regular American working class individuals some financial help. Immediately, whoa! Calm down. We can't do that. There's a hazard there. There's a moral hazard. Unlimited funds to Israel, though, please.
Debt currently runs at, according to Truth in Accounting.
He doesn't give a about debt, bro. He loved the Trump tax cuts. Don't give me about deficit hawking. Same with inflation, like Trump tax cuts. What do you think that did?
Some $35 trillion. The actual truth, in terms of unfunded liabilities like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, is more like $156 trillion. So things are going amazing here in this United States. And Kamala Harris and company, they are ready to dump more money into the system. According to Jeff Stein, the White House economics reporter for the Washington Post, Kamala Harris is now proposing $25,000 in federal assistance for first-time home buyers going to 1.4 million people. Quote, many Americans work hard at their jobs, save and pay their rent on time month after month, but they can't save enough after paying their rent and other bills to save for a down payment, denying them a shot at owning a home and building wealth. As the Harris-Walz plan starts to expand the supply of entry-level homes, they will, during their first term, provide working families who have paid their rent on time for 2 years and are buying their first home up to $25,000 in down payment assistance, with more generous support for first-generation homeowners. The Biden-Harris administration initially proposed providing $25,000 in down payment assistance only for 400,000 first-generation home buyers, or home buyers whose parents don't own a home, and a $10,000 tax credit for first-time home buyers. Vice President Harris's plan will simplify and significantly expand that plan by providing up to $25,000 for all eligible first-time home buyers, while still calling for a significant addition for first-generation homeowners. It will expand the reach of down payment assistance, allowing over 4 million first-time buyers over 4 years to get significant down payment assistance on average of $25,000 to get the funds they need to buy a first home. So what is that? That is helicoptering $25,000 of cash to people who want to buy a first home. Now, I have no idea what the provisions on creditworthiness are here, because it turns out they're going to flush a bunch of that money down the toilet if you are simply giving people money who cannot afford to actually pay for the mortgage. The down payment is only part of what you're paying when you pay for a house. There's upkeep, there's mortgage. Turns out owning a home kind of expensive, which is why a lot.
Oh my God. Yeah, listen, there's a lot of people who have enough in their finances to become first-time home buyers, but this would be greatly beneficial for their down payment, right? Like they have enough to pay for the mortgage, they have enough for everything else, but there's like a little bit of a budget shortfall there. Ultimately, this is not a solution to the problem. This is not even a patchwork solution to the problem at all. The reality of the matter is, obviously, the solution to the problem is deflating home prices. And the only way to do that is by increasing supply and also making it as unaffordable as possible to be a landlord. Okay? Decommodifying housing is the only way out of this problem. Ben, of course, thinks that's communism. And in some respects, it kind of is socialism. I'll be honest with you, but it's good. Not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
A lot of people rent right now. But according to Kamala Harris, it is time for the federal...
Ben says, if unions so good, why have the American capitalist class eviscerated them so there's only 10%? Ben says, if home ownership so good, why is everybody renting? I don't know, man. Maybe because it's impossible to own a home, dude. Like, what do you mean?
Federal government to simply helicopter cash over people She is pairing this, supposedly, with tax credits to get people to build 3 million new units.
Yeah, as you always say, it's expensive to be poor. My mortgage payment is way cheaper than the rents in my area. I know. It always is, of course, because your rent is subsidizing your landlord's mortgage. Your rent is oftentimes paying the entirety of your landlord's mortgage. And then some. The real barrier is the down payment. This is supposed to try and make up for that.
The problem, of course, is that she presumably will attempt to rent control all of those units. She will attempt to price control all of those units. So on the one hand, she will give, and on the other hand, she will take. You know, all of this market interventionism is simply a sop to people who want free stuff from the federal government. And by the way, it ain't free. We all get to pay for it, or rather, all our children get to pay for it. She is also proposing
that meme about the bank says I can't pay $900 for a mortgage, so I have to pay $1,500 in rent resonates with so many people because it's the truth. I hate the idea, dude. People are such like relentless liars on the subject. Like, oh, dude, you don't get it. Like, people actually want to rent. Like, yeah, sure, there are some people who want to rent, but I think it's one of the grossest fucking lies that people tell. Okay, like there are certain instances where people want short-term ownership over something rather than like long-term ownership. But if it was affordable, of course people would rather take the ownership over rent. Like, what are we talking about? That, and when landlords say they provide housing, yeah, that makes me so mad. It's like, no, you don't provide housing, dude. The housing exists. You just park on it. Rare Adam Conover L, he defended renting on a show. Yeah, it's understandable. There are people who prefer to rent, especially if they're gonna move around or some shit. Okay, that's fine. But a major part of the reason why people prefer to rent is because they just don't have money. They don't have enough money. They don't have enough money to own a home. Home ownership is very costly.
$6,000 tax credit for new parents. Now remember, when J.D. Vance proposes a tax credit for new parents in order to increase the number of children being born in the United States, then that is sexist and horrifying. When Kamala Harris does it, it's genius and wonderful. The difference between the two proposals, I would assume, is that J.D. Vance's proposal actually has some work requirements attached to it, because we would like to see people be able to support their kids beyond a $6,000 tax credit. One of the things Democrats tried to do by increasing these payments during the pandemic was basically make them universal without any work requirements whatsoever, essentially implementing a universal basic income. According to Axios, the economic plan includes tax cuts for middle-class families, including a $6,000 child tax credit for families during the first year of a kid's life, when expenses go up and income often goes down while a parent steps out of the workforce for childcare. Harris, echoing Joe Biden, wants to bring back 2021's expanded child tax credit, which was $3,600 per child under age 5 and $3,000 for those older under the American Rescue Plan. There were no work provisions under the American Rescue Plan. And so what it ended up being was just free money, helicoptered.
Dude, what are we saying, brother? Like, dude, I love Republicans because they're just like, good things are actually bad and bad things are actually good. Like, most of this commentary just revolves around like, America has a lot of problems. Okay, America has a lot of issues. TikTok is doing numbers. Yeah, I saw that. America has a lot of issues. We mustn't solve them. If you try to solve them, I will defend it tooth and nail to not solve them.
To people who then had a tough time supporting the kids on the other end of that payment. For lower income adults who aren't raising kids, the proposal would expand the earned income tax credit as well. So, just in case you're wondering, this is not about getting more Americans to have kids because we have birth rates that are too low. What it really is about is just giving people cash. It's just handing cash out the door. Not her cash, understand. She's never earned a dime. She's been a complete useless person on the taxpayer dime for virtually her entire career. What this is about is using your money to pay off her political constituents. That's what this is about, always and forever.
Hassan, you Hassan. There's nothing funnier than watching a guy like Ben Shapiro who's like, actually, if you want to have children, you should and die. And I turn around and go, hey man, that seems like a really popular policy that you're shitting on right now. And I do think that Americans should be able to get additional funds to have children, especially if you're worried about birth rates like you claim you are. And this guy doesn't even listen to anything I have to say and comes in and goes, fuck you, Hassan, Hassan. What is the issue that you have here? with what I've said. Like, hopefully one day you will not be this like annoying little angry demon who is lashing out at the world because of all the awful that they experience. And then once you actually overcome some of these problems, you'll be able to find someone that you love. And I hope that when you find someone that you love, you'll want to have children with that person. Now, when that moment comes, you are going to have a lot of financial problems. So like having a child tax credit would probably be beneficial. It is one of the major hurdles that couples experience in terms of their dire economic circumstances. So like, I just don't really get why you would be against this kind of policy. You know what I mean? Are you against this kind of policy? What are you like? What has made you this angry? That's a lot of assumptions based on 2 stupid sentences. No, I didn't make assumptions beyond the fact that if someone is typing this in a Twitch chat, they're probably very angry at the world. Do you think that that's an unfair assumption to make? The rest of it was basically me saying, you know, I hope that you will be happy enough and overcome whatever these anger issues you have currently so that you can one day find a partner that you love and have children.
Always. I mean, it's terrible economic policy. It truly is. Again,
Don't ban 'em.
This sort of stuff is for stupid people. It is economic policy that was dropped on its head as a baby. And yet Wall Street seems to be willing to dump money on her. Why? And the answer is because Wall Street is always trying to get in bed with the person they think is most powerful. The thing to understand about Wall Street is that one of the great failures of Wall Street and of...
Damn, he's just recognizing that Kamala Harris is a better shot at winning than Donald Trump. And therefore Wall Street is trying to get in bed with Kamala Harris, even though her tax policies in this regard are going to be worse for the economy overall. Only Ben knows what's good for the economy. Not Wall Street, not Kamala Harris, nobody else, just Ben.
Big business in general, they are not capitalist by nature. They are profit-seeking. There is a difference. Profit-seeking means that you will find money wherever it lies. So if the best way to make a profit as a business is to get in bed with corrupt Democrats, you'll do it. You'll rig the system for your own benefit if you can make a profit. Well, Wall Street very often is trying to rig the system for its own benefit. What you need is an unrigged system, like...
Oh my God!
Unity Today. Corporatism.
Bro, he does so many more ads than me at the top of the hour. Bro, in 23 minutes, he has served like 4 ads, dude. At least on the Hasanabi broadcast, you get 1 minute of ads or 3 minutes of ads at the top of the hour and 1 minute of ads in the middle of the hour. That's it. And you can avoid them by subscribing. This brother is starving, bro. Fuck. 100,000 views in 5 hours. He's ass too. Holy dude, what the his views are ass. He was at 8K Andy. This guy, the kill yourself guy, didn't come back. God damn, dude. Farming ads like crazy. What do you mean? It's capitalism at its best? Not really. It's capitalism when I do it. When I serve you 3-minute ads at the top of the hour. You know what I'm saying? That's capitalism. When Ben does it, it's actually not. It's some different thing. It's good. It's good, actually. At the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break. I think you guys suspected that, right? I was serving it to you. Here's a 3-minute ad break now. Still not as bad as Ben's shit, dude. Holy.
It is not capitalism. And then when that system inevitably falls on its face because the government is bad at picking winners and losers, when those bubbles always burst, capitalism gets blamed. It's one of the perversities of the way that our system of government works under a mixed economy. Mixed economy meaning free market for some parts and government sponsored, subsidized, and run for other parts.
There's literally not a single sector that doesn't rely on government. Bro, Ben loves talking about the oil and gas industry. He is funded by oil barons, by the way, the Wilkes brothers. I believe those are the 2 guys. Okay. 85% of the subsidies in the energy sector go to the oil and gas industry. I ain't never heard him chirp about that. Dan and Ferris Wilkes are funders of the Daily Wire and founders of the Daily Wire.
Whenever there's a failure, the free market gets blamed. And then more government interventionism. Then the government fails, and then the free market gets blamed some more. That's the perverse cycle that our government works through, and our media, and unfortunately a lot of Wall Street. According to Politico, enthusiasm surged in the week since Harris took over from President Joe Biden, who was hemorrhaging support with high-dollar donors. It took less than a month for Harris to smash former President Donald Trump's cash advantage. She did it without offering many details on her economic policy. Business leaders, from Lazard President Ray McGuire to Blackstone Group President Jonathan Gray, lined up behind her as she erased Trump's lead in the polls. Former Goldman Sachs CEO Lloyd Blankfein told Politico the business-friendly policies offered by Trump are attractive to Wall Street, no doubt. But many players find other aspects of the Trump package unrelated to finance overwhelmingly negative. Like most people, folks in finance weigh a variety of interests and concerns and may find the lesser-known Harris more attractive than the Trump they know. Okay, in reality, it's not about them loving abortion so much on Wall Street that they are willing to dump their economic interests on the side. The answer is they believe that they can buy exceptions to the rules for themselves. And so far, that's worked. They did this with Barack Obama as well. Didn't hurt him at all. They were able to make bank off the Federal Reserve's loose monetary policy. Firms like Goldman Sachs made a ton of money by working with the Treasury Department and the Federal Reserve in order to facilitate expansion or decrease in the money supply. So, of course, they're going to support the person they think is going to win. Okay, again, all of this is terrible economic policy. All of it is going to lead to economic stagnation at best. But Kamala has a plan. You're not going to hear any answers about this. You're going to know nothing about this because she's got one thing. She's got joy. Now, I know that when you think of Kamala Harris and that rictus smile that she likes to lay on the American people, you don't think joy. You think more like Joaquin Phoenix in Joker, like a pathological, bizarre laugh that breaks out at all the wrong times. But the media have recast her campaign as a campaign of joy.
Okay, I'm done. We've seen enough.